Today is supposed to be the most romantic day of the year, but is the Me Too movement putting a chill on romance today? Here to tell us how dating dynamics have changed is equity educator and consultant Rania El Mugammar. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
This is a big discussion that people are having right now because we are now 4 months, I think it's been, since the first Weinstein allegations came out. And I think to say that things have changed on the dating front and interpersonal relationships have changed is an understatement. How do you see the Me Too movement changing how dating is happening?
I think a lot more people are really conscious of the need to have really direct, honest conversations about consent. Probably a lot of people are in that place of doing reflection about their past behavior and probably feeling like they shouldn't have made some assumptions or that going forward they should have a lot more honest conversations about that.
Really interesting as we're putting up, how things have changed. What are the top concerns that you are hearing? You do workshops about this. People who are dating today say, what are their top concerns?
I think it's kind of two-tier. You get people who are now conscious of rape culture, are conscious of the systems around it and the behaviors around it, but can't necessarily imagine what the alternative looks like. A lot of people are starting to notice some of their behaviors and their patterns of language and kind of looking for ways to unlearn it and replace it. But also I'm seeing a lot of conversations around parenting. How do you talk to your kids about these things? When do you talk to your kids about these things? I think we're all socialized to have conversations about sexual health and sexuality with our children to an extent, but then we don't know how to bring conversations in around consent. How do we instill a sense of responsibility in all our children across the gender spectrum to have these conversations and not just make it a conversation that we usually direct towards people who are socialized as young girls and women to be protect yourself, be sure, don't do this, do that, stay safe. But then we're not necessarily having that conversation with other people at around what consent really looks like.
So, a lot of people are now in this, it seems, in the era where they're afraid, particularly men, to make that first move. And it does beg the question, what happens to flirting? What happens to making remarks that you think are maybe a compliment to somebody? Is this now the end of spontaneity and flirting?
Well, I think there's something I'd like to address about the fear. While you might be afraid that your advances will be taken, quote unquote, the wrong way, or that you'll be read as abusive or coercive or whatever, while you're getting ready for your date, the girl or woman that you're going on a date with is texting her friends her location, a description of your car, what you look like, in case she turns up missing. So when we talk about fear, we need to understand that. So many of us are like, hey, I'm going on a date with this guy. This is what he looks like, just in case. And we're joking, but we're really not, right? So I think the fear is kind of uneven in this place. And I understand if you feel afraid, but that shouldn't immobilize you. That should drive you to have really honest conversations. And those conversations, I know that there's a sense that it's, sucking the romance out of these interactions, but there's really wonderful, exciting ways to have conversations about consent and intimacy and pleasure. It doesn't have to be like, do you formally accept my advance? It can be like, what do you like? What do you enjoy? Where are your boundaries? And really, there's fun ways to have these conversations.
Is that happening before you actually go on a date with somebody, or is that happening like date one, date two? I mean, where do you see timing, or is that on a couple by couple basis?
It's definitely on a couple by couple basis, and it depends what kind of conversations you've had leading up to that date. Have you been talking to each other for a while? And even if you've been talking, you're texting or you're talking in a dating app and then you meet up in real life, you need to check in. Sometimes we're a lot more comfortable texting things because, you're not face-to-face with someone, but you need to check in around people's feelings of comfort, their safety, and their desires when you meet somebody in person, definitely.
It's a fascinating discussion and one that I hope we continue to have on this show and many more. Thank you so much for your perspective.
Thank you for having me.